Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I beg to move that pursuant to Section 13 of the Parliamentary Remuneration Act of 2014, Parliament makes a determination to reduce the rates payable for overseas travelling allowances of the following positions by amendment to Part B of the schedule to the Parliamentary Remuneration Act of 2014, as set out below. 1. The Prime Minister. Section 9, Overseas Travelling Allowance, UNDP Subsistence Allowance plus 100%. 2. Cabinet Ministers. Under Section 8, Overseas Travelling Allowance, UNDP Subsistence Allowance plus 50%. 3. Assistant Ministers. Section 8, Overseas Travelling Allowance, UNDP Subsistence Allowance plus 25%. The Leader of the Opposition, under Section 8, Overseas Travelling Allowance, UNDP Subsistence Allowance plus 50%. Members of Parliament, including Deputy Speaker, Government, Opposition Whip, and leaders of the government in Parliament, and excluding the Prime Minister, Ministers, Speaker, and the Leader of the Opposition, those are excluded, Overseas Travelling Allowance, UNDP Subsistence Allowance plus 25%. And that this amendment to the determination to take effect from 1st December 2023 until such time that the Emoluments Committee tables its report in Parliament and the subsequent debate and vote has taken place. Thank you, Speaker.
Is there a second?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to second the motion by the Honourable Prime Minister. Thank you.
Thank you. And I now invite the Honourable Prime Minister to speak on his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. As you had pointed out prior to the moving of this motion in my name is in today's order paper is for the reduction of travel allowances for members of Cabinet, assistant ministers, and members of Parliament. Before I go into it, Mr. Speaker, sir, I will add my words of congratulations to our sportsmen and women in the Solomons at this time, and also our words of condolences to those that had represented Fiji, particularly the late Sitiveni Rabuka and the people that were known of Bunda. I have a granddaughter playing in the South Pacific Games, and I send out my greetings to them, having been captain of the Fiji team at the Pacific Games and also at the Commonwealth Games. So I believe they're enjoying themselves, but working very hard to get back up the scale, the medal scale. Mr. Speaker, sir, salaries and allowances in the public sector were somewhat distorted by the previous government, and it was our policy to review this for parity and relativity. Prior to the promulgation of the Parliamentary Remunerations Law in 2014, the salaries of the interim cabinet salaries of the cabinet ministers were a state secret and paid through a private accounting firm, despite being the subject of audit query. Soon after assuming office in December of last year, I announced my intention, for the reduction of the exorbitant ministerial salaries and travel allowances. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, sir, that was not operationalized because of some legal opinions that came to us, and probably to you too. Therefore, this motion is being tabled today to put in place the reductions. Mr. Speaker, sir, the government as employer has a legal obligation to ensure its officials have sufficient funds to carry out their duties necessitated by travel. Mr. Speaker, sir, these are costs to the taxpayers and the host organizations that engage our government ministers and officials. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, the current rates are still exorbitant. It is the responsibility of this House, under the Parliamentary Remunerations Act of 2014, to ensure that ministers and officials on duty travel stay in decent accommodation and are able to safely move from one point to the other to undertake their engagements. As you are aware, Mr. Speaker, sir, the requirements arising from the nature of engagements may differ from official to official depending upon their seniority and responsibility. Mr. Speaker, these costs vary between countries and within countries. For instance, the cost in Canberra would be different from the costs in Brisbane. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, the current formula put in place by the past government for calculating these allowances are excessive. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, this motion seeks to correct that anomaly. The formula before this August House today significantly reduces the daily allowance while remaining adequate for the officials concerned. The starting point for the calculation of the allowances in Fiji has been pegged at the UNDP Daily Subsistence Allowance, DSA, rates. The UNDP DSA rates are updated and published every quarter and are reliable. It is the standard used by almost all countries in calculating the travel allowances for ministers and officials. For Fiji and other countries, the extra loading for members of cabinet, members of parliament, and permanent secretaries is to facilitate additional meetings that may be held. The extra loading also covers for representational events where these officials are hosting their counterparts. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, the formula for increase made in 2016, despite the devastations of severe tropical Winston, was excessive and, sad to say, ill-advised. In comparison to the previous administration led by the late Francis Kamses Mara, the late Laisenia Garcia, and the SPT coalition of the 1990s, the 2016 increases were exorbitant. This motion then, Mr. Speaker, sir, is intended to rectify the anomaly in travel allowances brought about in 2016. Under the proposed formula, for example, the Prime Minister's Daily Subsistence Allowance, DSA, for Auckland, New Zealand, is reduced from 2,826 to 1,590. Similarly, for ministers, the new formula reduced their DSA for Auckland from $2,090 to $954. This is the same DSA for Honourable Leader of the Opposition. For assistant ministers, the allowance declines from 1,572 to 759. This is the same DSA for the opposition members of Parliament. The new formula will apply to all destinations for consistency. Mr. Speaker, sir, the exorbitant salaries of cabinet and in public sector are also areas of concern to taxpayers. And we read about them in the social media every day. It is also our policy to review the correct the severe distortion of salaries and allowances in the public sector and restore parity and relativity. It is therefore appropriate, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the Emoluments Committee of Parliament has been established and now carrying out its work with the assistance of an independent consultant. Mr. Speaker, sir, if the House agrees, these revised travel allowances will be effective from the 1st of December 2023 until the Emoluments Committee completes its work and reports back to the August House. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Prime Minister. Honourable members.